to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video, and in this video we're going to talk about everybody's favorite general manager, the polarizing figure Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman, of course, had an interview yesterday. I was at work, otherwise I would have had a video up on it yesterday, talking to WFAN about his failures as a general manager and some of the decisions that he made. And he owned up to a lot of the mistakes that he made, and I'll give him credit for that. There's going to be some people out there that just blame Dave Gettleman for everything. And when you're a general manager, you're going to make some mistakes. Brian Cashman's won several World Series with the New York Yankees. He's made many mistakes. I saw a laundry list of a tweet where this guy posted 30 things, and he was pointing out the Kareem Martin signing. He was pointing out the Antoine Bethea signing. The Antoine Bethea signing was for $2.5 million. How are you going to get on a guy who has no cap space, who's trying to bring guys in on the bargain basement? It makes no sense to me. Okay, you can look at every general manager in the league. You're gonna have signings like that. Now, his prime mistakes, yeah, you could get on him for Nate Solder. Yeah, you could get on him for trading for Alec Ogletree, but he tried to fill needs. You go back and look at that list, you tell me a left tackle that was better on the open market than Nate Solder. He tried to get the best available left tackle to help out his quarterback. What was his biggest mistake? Well, one of his biggest mistakes was he admitted sticking with Eli. He said that was a mistake, and we're going to get into all that now. Whether or not that was forced on by ownership, we'll never really know. You know, ownership may be using Gettleman as the fall guy for that decision. He also gave a lot of credit to Pat for Daniel Jones. He said that Pat put him on to Daniel Jones, and that makes you think and a little bit and worry a little bit about the future head coach and how he's going to gel with Daniel Jones. Shurmur picked this guy out. He handpicked him because he felt that he fit his system to a T, and that's something the New York Giants are going to have to think long and hard about when they bring on the next offensive coordinator and head coach, because you do not want to stunt the growth of this quarterback. But yeah, Dave was blatantly, painfully honest in this interview. He told you what was on his mind, and he told you the complete truth, and he doesn't always tell you the truth. We remember all the Odell quotes that we didn't sign this guy to trade him. Well, it ended up that you did. Now it's possible when they initially signed him, they didn't. But they ended up trading him. So he's not always honest. But in this, he took full blame for everything. He basically said a couple days ago, I think it was, that he would have fired himself. He said that he was surprised that he was back. He also took a lot of the blame for trying to rebuild and compete at the same time, which is very hard to do. We've seen that fail many times in New York, specifically with the Knicks. So he took a lot of blame, and you got to give him, I guess, credit for that. But yeah, let's jump into some of the quotes about what Dave Gettleman said about his job with the New York Giants. First, I wanted to pull these up. This is about the rebuild. Of winning and building at the same time, a mea culpa from Gettleman during his radio rounds this week. I came into it, and I thought we could do both at the same time. I was wrong. So he's admitting right off the bat that he failed from the start. Now, where is he talking about that he was wrong? You could argue the Saquon Barkley pick. Some people may say that that's not what he's talking about, that he was a premium player. I love Saquon Barkley. He's my favorite player on this team. I'm glad the New York Giants drafted him. But a lot of people may argue that was a win-now move, and he wasn't forward-thinking when he made it. Running backs have a short shelf life, obviously. They usually break down around 29 or 30. And a lot of people criticized him for that move when he made it. Said he should have taken the quarterback there. Now, if you look at some of the quarterbacks he could have taken, I'm not going to put Lamar Jackson in that grouping. Lamar Jackson was picked the 30th overall. He was on nobody's radar that early in the draft. He had way too many question marks coming into the pros. So I'm not going to put Lamar Jackson on him. You could argue Rosen, you could argue Allen, and you could argue Darnold. But if you think Daniel Jones is better than those players, well, then he didn't make a mistake there. The mistake he could have made, I suppose, is he could have traded down. You could argue that he could have taken a Nelson, who, obviously, offensive linemen tend to last longer than running backs and maybe a more important position. You could argue he should have taken a Bradley Chubb or looked to trade down. I'm not going to put the quarterbacks on him because Daniel Jones, to this point in his career, has met those guys for the most part. I like Josh Allen. I think he's got a very high upside, and he's headed to the playoffs, but he also has a supreme defense there in Buffalo, probably the best defense in all of football, so that certainly doesn't hurt. Give Daniel Jones the best defense in football, see how he does next year. So, that's one of the moves. I guess you could argue Alec Ogletree was a win-now move, bringing him in. So, maybe there was a couple of win-now moves there, but overall I think he's done a pretty good job of rebuilding through the draft. I will say that. But, yeah, that was a mistake for sure. It's very hard to do both at the same time. You're usually going to fail when you try to do that. Next quote I'm going to pull up. Gettleman was battered by the media. And by the way, he's become the punching bag of New York now. I made videos on the mob of New York. It was Eli for years. Once Eli got benched, they turned their focus on Pat Shurmur, and now the mob is headed straight at Dave Gettleman. And any little thing that goes wrong, New York Giants fans and the media are going to blame him for it. And that's what's happening. During the end of the season press conference on Tuesday, and he said he absolutely knows he has to do better. And you got to like hearing that, I suppose. He says, over the last 2 years, not good enough. Really, it hasn't been good enough. He said of his performance, it will get better. Well, Dave, it better get better, because if the Giants are a subpar team next year, you're probably going to be without a job. And then the next thing we're going to have to worry about is which GM is going to want to come on and take on the head coach that's currently on the roster. So the Giants better bring in the right head coach. Next thing. This was from the interview yesterday. This was talking about Pat Shurmur and his role in drafting Daniel Jones. We looked at all the quarterbacks, and right up front, Pat was the most enamored with Daniel, Gettleman said on WFAN. We just kept investigating. You look at Pat's history with quarterbacks, the young guys, and what he's gotten out of them. For him to be that enamored with him, it certainly made me do my homework. So he is giving Pat Shurmur the credit for Daniel Jones. And it makes you wonder why he was the fall guy and Gettleman wasn't, if that's the case. You brought in a quarterback that fit Pat Shurmur's offense, that did well under Pat Shurmur. Now what I worry about is the next coach that comes on, is he going to fit his style? We've seen many quarterbacks that thrive in certain systems and fail in others. So the Giants got to think long and hard about that and make sure they bring in a coach who can make Daniel Jones reach its full potential. Because Pat Shurmur saw in him what he could get out of him based on his system. So that's something that has to be taken into account. But that's Dave again being brutally honest. Basically saying, yeah, that was Pat's guy. That was Pat's guy. And next up, Rivera already was in Carolina when Gettleman arrived. So the first head coach he ever hired was Shurmur. And it sounds like Gettleman wanted to give more time to his hand-picked choice, but ownership disagreed. Came from above, Gettleman told ESPN on the decision, pertaining to the firing of Pat Shurmur. So he's basically saying, nah, if it was me, Pat Shurmur stays. I think he was doing a good enough job. I think that he, with Daniel Jones and everything else, I would have kept him. So that was on ownership. Ownership went above Gettleman, and they said, no, we got to get rid of this guy. You got to bring in a new head coach if you want to keep your job. Tisch, Gettleman, and Vice President of Football Operations, Kevin Abrams, all are in on the coaching search. So that's a little division there, though. You would think the GM, that's one point where maybe you want to bend the truth a little bit. But he came right out, and he was honest as can be. He said, that's on ownership. That's not on me. So, interesting stuff there. Seems like he feels like he's responsible for Pat Shurmur losing his job. And maybe feels a little bit guilty about it. Next up. One reason the Giants are in the position they are in is because they tried to squeeze 2 more years out of Eli Manning's career. After they fired Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese benched him in 2017, the Giants wasted $23.2 million of cap space, better spent on a pass rusher or right tackle, and I agree with that. I think it was a $6 or $7 million dead cap hit. So you're talking about $16 million that could have been spent elsewhere. They decided to keep on Eli Manning. Unless you buy the team-friendly narrative, Manning was worth that sum as an insurance policy and mentor for Jones, did Gettleman feel forced to make one last run with 2-time Super Bowl MVP? The Cliff Notes answer is no. There was never that pressure, Gettleman told ESPN. Shurmur benched Manning for Jones after just 2 games. Going to Daniel was the correct decision, Gettleman said. And I don't know if Gettleman's telling the truth. He might be trying to protect ownership. Who knows? But if that is the truth, listen, I'm a huge Eli Manning fan. I say it all the time. He's my favorite New York Giant of all time. The fact that Eli Manning only played 2 games, the fact that you drafted a rookie quarterback never made sense to me. Keeping Eli Manning on the roster. If Eli was going to start the whole year and you were going to do what the Chiefs did with Alex Smith, I would have understood it. Being that maybe you need another year to learn under a quarterback. The Giants didn't take advantage of that situation. They benched Eli after 2 games. Hence, the $23 million was wasted. It was a bad decision to keep Eli Manning on the roster, in my opinion, if you planned on starting Daniel Jones as early as you did. That's my opinion. Now, whether or not that was Gettleman's decision to keep him on or ownership, we'll never know. Of course, we all remember the quotes at the beginning of the year. Mara said he would have preferred to see Eli Manning play the entire year. Now, obviously, a lot of that is probably based off the assumption that the team is doing well and they don't need to bring in the rookie quarterback. But yeah, I'm a huge Eli guy, but I even think it wasn't the right decision to bring him back on a $23 million contract if you were going to start Daniel Jones as early as you did. So that's my take on that. And here's the next quote, and we've got one more after this. This was on the Leonard Williams trade. Beningo and Roberts, obviously huge Jets fans, asked him about the trade, and Beningo and Roberts are both Jets fans. Gettleman thought that they would be upset about losing Leonard Williams for 2 draft picks in a trade to the Giants, but it turns out to be just the opposite. Beningo said, "I'll buy you dinner." I was very happy about it. Gettleman replied, "He who lasts laughs. He who lasts laugh." Of course we're going to try to sign him. Williams had a half sack in 8 games with the Giants. I thought Leonard Williams played well with the Giants. I'm not going to just look at the sacks. I thought he got a lot of quarterback pressures. Thought he stuffed the run holes. But Gettleman still has not really... maybe he hasn't been asked the question the right way. But Gettleman, why did you give up a 3rd and a 5th round pick? This is simple, guys, reporters. Ask him this. Why did you give up a 3rd and a 5th round pick for a guy that you could have signed the next year in free agency? What is your reasoning behind it? Do you plan on franchise tagging him? Did you think that you could have gotten him on a cheaper deal if you brought him in via trade? Like, what's the reasoning? That's what needs to be asked. You were 2-6 when you made the move. It never made sense. You were not going to win this year. Were you trying to save your job and prove that the team could win a few meaningless games down the stretch? I don't understand the move, Gettleman. Giants fans don't either. We like Leonard Williams. We want him back. I think a lot of us do anyway, for the right price. But we don't understand the trade, and that question still has not been answered directly, even though it's been asked 100 times. And then finally, there is this. Power struggle. Gettleman repeated to both shows, talking about both shows he talked to on the radio, he would be willing to cede say on personnel decisions to the right coach, if asked to do so by ownership. The Giants are willing to change their organizational structure in order to make sure they attract the best candidates. Whatever is in the best interest of the Giants, he said. So there you go. Dave Gettleman right there is telling you, I'm willing to do whatever the New York Giants want me to do, Mara and Tisch. And if they want a head coach to have full personnel say, I'm willing to let that happen. That's what it sounds like to me. And it sounds like to me that they may very well be making a push for a guy like a Matt Rule, a guy who's going to want personnel say. And we're going to have to wait and see. Obviously, in those quotes, it sounded like Gettleman would have liked Ron Rivera, but the Giants kept Pat Shurmur way too long. The Redskins moved on midseason, so they were able to probably talk to Rivera in season, and they probably had that deal locked up before the season concluded. But yeah, we'll see who the New York Giants end up with as their head coach, and better be the right decision. But crazy stuff came out yesterday. Gettleman being a little too honest. telling you, basically telling you that Pat Shurmur made the decision for Daniel Jones, telling you that he should have been fired, more or less saying that. But you got to like that he takes full responsibility. You got to like that he hopes, is going to strive and hopefully try to get better. And you got to like that he's willing to do whatever it takes. Like I've always said, Gettleman's done a great job drafting, and I think that's why he kept his job. You look at the list of the NFL.com top rookies. I'll have a video up on that, but a lot of them are New York Giants, and he did a great job in this year's draft. He got you your future franchise quarterback, or at least we hope. Got you Saquon Barkley. Got you a couple of nice weapons there in Darius Slayton, Dexter Lawrence. He did a really good job in the draft, and that's why he's still here. He's a good evaluator of talent. Outside of that, the way he handles the media, that needs to improve. But that's part of the charm to Dave Gettleman. He's gonna be himself no matter what. He's not gonna be the PC guy, and I think that attracts some people to him, and obviously some people don't like that. He comes off as arrogant at times, so I get the hatred and I get the love. But that's Dave Gettleman, and we got to get behind him. We got to hope that he does a good job this year as Giants fans. We can't criticize him for every little mistake he makes. Give him a real chance, get behind him, and hopefully he drafts well again this year, and we bring in a couple of good free agents. We'll see how it plays out, guys. But as always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.